I realized my son was ashamed of me the moment he laughed and said, "Mom, it's not reap, it's receipt." He said it loudly. Loud enough for the entire cafe to hear. Loud enough that it didn't feel like help. Felt like an announcement. I was 72 years old then. My hands were wrapped around a paper cup of coffee I didn't even want. I had only come because Daniel insisted we meet his coworkers. "It'll be nice," he said. That word used to mean something else when he was little. The cafe was bright and busy, full of confident voices and polished laughter. People smiled politely when Daniel introduced me. One woman looked at me with that quick, careful pity, the kind that lands and disappears before you can react. Daniel didn't notice. Or maybe he did and simply chose not to care. When I asked for sugar, he corrected me again. When I mispronounced a street name, he laughed and said, "You've lived here 40 years, Mom. How do you still talk like this?" I smiled. I nodded. I stayed quiet. Silence has a way of becoming a blanket when you've worn it long enough. My accent had never bothered me before. It came with me when I arrived here at 26, carrying one suitcase, a baby on my hip, and faith that wore out faster than my shoes. My English was never perfect, but it paid rent, fed my child, kept the lights on. When Daniel was young, he never corrected me. He used to translate for me patiently, standing tall like a little man proud to be needed. Somewhere along the line, that pride curdled into embarrassment. I didn't notice when it happened. Mothers rarely do. Outside the cafe, he told me I should practice more before speaking to people. He said it gently, like advice. Like my voice needed permission. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table. The same table where I helped him with homework. The same table where I signed papers for him when he needed help, trusting him not to ask too much of me. I told myself he was just stressed. That children say foolish things. That patience is love. But something cold had already settled in my chest. Not pain. Recognition. What I didn't know then was that the very thing he mocked, my accent, my careful words, would soon make strangers listen to me more closely than they ever listened to him. And that one day, very soon, my son would fall silent in a way no correction could ever fix. If a voice can embarrass a man this deeply, what truth is it carrying that he's so desperate to keep unheard? I was born with this accent, but I earned the right to keep it. When I arrived in this country, I was 26 and already tired in ways young people don't understand. I carried Daniel on my left side and a plastic bag of documents on my right. I didn't know the words for most things, but I knew numbers. Numbers kept us alive. Rent, hours, overtime, tips counted twice before sleep. My English came from overhearing other women at work, from warning labels, from supervisors who spoke louder as if volume could replace patience. I learned fast because mistakes cost money. I learned to nod when I didn't understand and to ask later, quietly, from someone kinder. Shame is a luxury when a child needs shoes. Daniel grew up listening to my broken sentences and my steady promises. I always kept those promises. When his classmates laughed at my speech during parent meetings, I smiled and thanked the teacher anyway. I told myself it didn't matter. What mattered was that my son would never scrub floors the way I did. I worked places where no one cared how I spoke as long as I showed up. Factories, kitchens, a nursing home where old men called me honey and worse. I learned the language of exhaustion before I learned the language of comfort. By the time Daniel was in high school, my English was good enough to argue with landlords and bad enough to remind everyone where I came from. That never bothered me. It meant I had survived something. But Daniel changed when he went to college. He came back speaking carefully, polishing his words, correcting mine at home. First gently. "You mean comfortable, Mom?" Then less gently. "That's not how people say it." I told myself this was education. Improvement. I was proud of him. I didn't notice when correction turned into irritation. When irritation turned into avoidance. When he stopped inviting friends over. When they did come, he warned me ahead of time. "Don't talk about old stuff," he said. "Don't tell stories. Just be normal." I didn't know what normal meant anymore. Still, I helped him. Always. I co-signed when he needed it. Signed where he pointed. Trusted him when he said, "It's just paperwork." He spoke fast then. Confident. Impatient. I spoke slow. We balanced each other, I thought. What I didn't see was how easily my silence made things convenient. By 72, I had learned to take up very little space. Speak softly. Smile quickly. Let younger voices talk over mine. I had earned rest, but I lived like a guest in my own life. Daniel didn't hear my accent anymore. He heard a liability. And the day I finally understood that was the day everything quietly began to shift. Rehook. When someone needs your silence this badly, it's rarely about kindness, and never about love. Daniel didn't start by mocking me. That came later. First, he edited me. It began with small interruptions. I would start a sentence and he would finish it faster, cleaner, as if helping. When I misused a word, he repeated it back correctly, louder than necessary. He smiled when he did it, but his jaw tightened. I noticed that before anything else. Then came the rules. Before dinners with people from his office, he'd say, "Don't talk about work. They won't understand. Don't tell immigration stories. It's depressing. And please, Mom, try not to joke. Your jokes don't always land." I nodded every time. Nodding became my second language. Soon he corrected me even when we were alone. If I said something wrong, he sighed, not angry, worse, tired. As if my way of speaking exhausted him. One evening I asked why it mattered so much. I said it carefully, gently, the way you ask questions you're afraid to hear answers to. He didn't look up from his phone. "People judge, Mom," he said. "I can't control that." I understood what he meant. And I understood what he didn't say. From then on, he spoke for me whenever he could. At banks. At appointments. On the phone. "She means." He'd cut in before I finished. I let him. It felt easier than watching his face tighten every time I opened my mouth. Sometimes strangers looked confused and asked me directly. Those moments made him visibly uncomfortable. He'd shift, clear his throat, answer anyway. I could feel him shrinking away from my voice. So I stopped offering opinions. Stopped correcting him when he was wrong. Stopped reminding him of things he forgot. I became careful. Filtered. Light. I told myself this was what good mothers do. They adapt. But something inside me was paying attention. I noticed how he exaggerated my accent when retelling stories to others. How he laughed before they did, just in case. How he never defended me when someone smirked. Once at a party, a man asked where I was from. Before I could answer, Daniel said, "Oh, she's been here forever. You know how accents stick." He laughed. The man laughed too. I didn't. On the drive home, Daniel talked about his promotion. I congratulated him. I meant it. But my chest felt tight, like something had finally taken shape and settled there. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and practiced saying my own name slowly, clearly, the way my mother taught me. I sounded like myself. And for the first time, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. My son wasn't trying to help me fit in. He was trying to erase the parts of me that reminded him where he came from. And worse, he believed I would always let him. When someone learns you'll always step aside for them, how far will they go before they stop seeing you at all? Daniel's life grew larger as mine grew quieter. After his promotion, everything accelerated. A new apartment, new furniture chosen by someone else, new people whose names slipped from my memory as soon as I heard them because they never looked at me long enough to matter. He learned quickly how to belong among them. When to laugh. When to nod. When to say nothing at all. He also learned how to edit his past. "We didn't have much," he'd say lightly, as if it were a phase he passed through, not a foundation. He never mentioned who worked nights so he could have mornings free. Never mentioned the smell of bleach on my hands or the years I came home after midnight and left again before dawn. When I spoke up gently, he waved it off. "That was a long time ago, Mom. It's not relevant." Not relevant. I tasted those words for days. He stopped bringing people to my house altogether. Said it was too far, too small, too old. When he did visit, he checked his watch often, took phone calls, corrected me even when I wasn't wrong, just different. His voice changed around me. Sharper. Less patient. Once I overheard him on the phone in my kitchen. He didn't know I was there. "Yeah, she's sweet," he laughed. "But very old school. Heavy accent. I keep her away from work stuff." I stood still and let the kettle scream until he noticed. He jumped, embarrassed for a moment, then annoyed. "You should turn that off," he said, like I'd done something wrong. That was when I understood my place in his life had shifted. I was no longer a source. I was a risk. Still, he needed me. He came with papers, questions, explanations that moved too fast. He told me what to sign and where. It's just formal, he said. You don't need to worry. I trusted him because trust was easier than conflict. And because he was my son. He spoke confidently to officials, to banks, to landlords. He always told me the same thing. They won't bother you. You're fine. I didn't notice how often he used my name when it helped him, and my silence when it helped him more. By then I had learned to read rooms quickly, to feel when I was being tolerated, not welcomed. I learned how to shrink myself without disappearing completely. It takes skill to be useful and invisible at the same time. People praised Daniel for how far he'd come. They called him impressive, resilient, self-made. He accepted it easily. He never corrected them. At night alone, I practiced speaking out loud just to hear my own voice. It grounded me, reminded me I was still here. Daniel thought he had outgrown me. What he didn't realize was that he was standing on something fragile, built partly on my name, my patience, and my carefully quiet signatures. And fragile things make the loudest sound when they finally break. When someone builds their future on your silence, what happens the moment you decide to speak? The paperwork began quietly, the way most important things do. Daniel never brought everything at once. It was always one form, one signature, one explanation that sounded reasonable if you didn't stop to think. He'd sit at my kitchen table, the same one where he once spilled juice and cried like the world was ending, and spread the documents neatly in front of me. Yellow tabs marked where my pen should go. Just here, Mom. And here. This one, too. He spoke fast. Faster than usual. Confident but strained. Once I asked what a form was for. He rubbed his face and sighed. It's boring stuff. Taxes. Old things. You wouldn't want to deal with it. He smiled then, as if protecting me from something unpleasant. I let it go. Believing him felt like love. And I had spent a lifetime trusting him to know better than I did. Sometimes I tried to read the papers. The language was thick, formal, cold. My eyes tired quickly. Daniel would notice and pull the pages back. I've already checked everything, he said. You can trust me. I had trusted him since the day I first held him. Trust doesn't disappear just because a child grows taller than you. But I began to notice how carefully he avoided letting anyone speak directly to me. If officials called, he answered. If letters arrived, he opened them. If something sounded serious, he minimized it. They always send notices, he said once, waving an envelope. It doesn't mean anything. I asked why my name appeared so often. He laughed lightly. Because you've been here forever. It makes things easier. Easier for whom, I wondered, but didn't ask. The worst moment came late one evening. Daniel arrived irritated before he even sat down. He didn't take off his jacket. Didn't ask how I was. He spread the papers out quickly, sloppily. His phone buzzed again and again. Something had gone wrong. I reached for one page just to look. He snapped it back. You don't need to read that, he said. It's not for you. My name was printed at the top. I pointed to it. Then why is my name there? He closed his eyes. For a moment something raw slipped through, fear maybe. Then it hardened. Because your accent scares people, he said. The room went still. What do you mean? I asked. He laughed once, sharp and humorless. Every time you talk, officials slow down. They start asking questions. They look at you like you don't know what you're signing. I do know, I said quietly. That's not the point, he snapped. You don't sound like you do. There it was. Clean. Unfiltered. You should be grateful, he continued. I handle everything for you. All I ask is that you don't complicate things. I asked him how. By speaking, he said. I didn't cry. I just felt very tired. I signed that night. My hand shook, but habit is powerful. Love even more so. After he left, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and spoke my name out loud with my accent, the one he hated. I sounded steady. That was the night something shifted. If my voice frightened him this much, it was because somewhere inside it lived a truth he was desperate to keep buried. If your own voice is treated like a threat, what danger does it pose, and to whom? The days after that conversation were quiet, but not peaceful. Daniel didn't call. That wasn't unusual. Silence had become our normal language. But this silence felt different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was crowded, filled with questions I had avoided for years. I moved through my routine slowly, made soup I barely ate, folded laundry that didn't need folding. I noticed how carefully I had built my life around being available, around not interfering, not complicating, not taking up space. I thought about the word he used. Embarrassing. How easily it had left his mouth. How long it must have lived there before he finally said it out loud. For the first time, I allowed myself a dangerous thought. What if my silence wasn't protecting him anymore? I replayed moments I had dismissed. The way he panicked when officials spoke directly to me. The way he insisted on answering for me. The way my accent only became a problem when paperwork appeared. I wasn't stupid. I never had been. I had negotiated rent, managed households, survived a country that didn't wait for me to understand it. I knew what fear looked like on a man's face. One afternoon, I took out old folders he had left behind over the years. Copies. Duplicates. Things he'd forgotten to collect. I didn't understand everything, but I understood enough to feel my stomach tighten. Dates that didn't match. Addresses used interchangeably. My name appearing where his should have been. Nothing screamed. But nothing was clean. That was when the boundary appeared. Not loud, not dramatic, just firm. When Daniel came a few days later with more papers, I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I simply said I was tired and needed time. He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "It'll only take a minute," he said. "I know," I replied. "But not today." He laughed nervously. "Mom, don't do this. You're overthinking." "No," I said calmly. "I'm thinking for the first time." He left irritated, already texting someone as he walked out. I closed the door and leaned against it, surprised by how steady my legs felt. In the days that followed, letters arrived addressed directly to me. I didn't give them to Daniel. I read them slowly with a dictionary beside me, the way I used to read school notices when he was small. Some of the language frightened me. Some of it clarified things I hadn't wanted to see. I finally understood why my accent was inconvenient. Why my voice slowed rooms down. Why he needed me quiet. Because when I spoke, people listened longer. I didn't feel angry yet. I felt clear. And clarity, I learned, is dangerous to anyone who depends on your confusion. I made myself a promise then. Whatever came next, I would not lie. Not with words. Not with silence. Daniel had spent years teaching me my voice was a liability. He never considered the possibility that it was the only thing strong enough to undo him. If truth finally has a voice, who will it speak to first? And what will it cost? The knock came on a Tuesday morning. It was calm, precise, right on time. Daniel arrived early, jittery, rehearsing sentences under his breath like prayers he didn't believe in anymore. He corrected my pronunciation of a word I hadn't even said. Old habits die hard. I watched him pace my living room, confidence leaking out of him in small, invisible drops. When the door opened, they greeted me first. They used my full name. They spoke slowly, not because they thought I was incapable, but because they were listening. Daniel stepped forward immediately. "I'll handle this," he said. One of them looked past him, looked at me. "We're here to speak with your mother," he said. "If that's all right." For the first time in my son's life, his voice did not take priority. They asked me simple questions. Where I was born. When I arrived. How long I'd lived here. I answered carefully in my own time, with my accent exactly where it belonged. No one rushed me. No one corrected me. Then the questions changed. They asked about forms. About statements made in my name. About information I had signed years ago. Daniel interrupted. Tried to explain. Tried to rescue the moment. "No," I said quietly. "I am not confused." That surprised him. Surprised me too. I told the truth. Not angrily. Not dramatically. I described. I clarified. I spoke. And the room changed. They thanked me when they left. They did not thank Daniel. 3 days later they came back. This time they asked for him. Not me. They spoke professionally. Calmly. They told him the matter concerned him, not his mother. Daniel looked at me then. Not angry, not embarrassed, afraid. Tell them you didn't understand, he whispered. Please. I didn't move. I understood enough, I said. And now they do too. When they took him away, there was no shouting. No scene. Just quiet consequences. That night, I ate dinner alone at my kitchen table. The same table where he once needed me to read for him. The same table where he learned I would always step aside. Only this time I didn't. In the weeks that followed, people spoke to me differently. Straighter. Slower. They waited when I spoke. My accent didn't close doors. It opened them. Daniel called once from a restricted number. He asked me to help him sound confused. I won't lie, I said. Not anymore. Silence followed. Real silence. The kind that comes when there's nothing left to correct. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I reclaimed myself. At 73, I learned something no one teaches you when you're young. Love does not require disappearance. Patience is not the same as erasure. And your voice does not need to be perfect to be powerful. If this story felt familiar, if you've ever been told to stay quiet, to shrink, to soften yourself so others feel bigger, know this. You do not owe anyone your silence. And if this story moved you, helped you, or reminded you of your own strength, like this video so more people hear voices like this, share it with someone who needs permission to speak. Subscribe for more true stories of strength, survival, and dignity. Because some stories don't shout, they speak, and that is enough.